Cold is the Arctic sea, far are your arms from me. Long will this winter be, frozen in Frobisher Bay, frozen in Frobisher Bay.
Great, I'll kick us off. So welcome everyone, thanks for coming tonight to the presentation on tacking and wearing. So this is going to be a joint presentation event, mainly put on by James of His Majesty's Bomb Ship Terror and the Crown Forces of North American Naval Establishment is helping. My name is Rory, and I'm one of the social media officers for the Naval Establishment. And I'll be running some of the chat and the question stuff, just moderating, keeping track of things. So before we get started, I'd just like to do a quick land acknowledgement, if that's okay with everyone. So James and I would like to acknowledge that as we host this presentation, we're on the traditional lands and unceded territory of many nations, including the Coast Salish, the Chinook, the Haida, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. However, as the Naval Establishment is an organization that spans North America, we'd like to acknowledge and honor the land on both sides of the border that is the traditional territory to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples all across Turtle Island. As the Naval Establishment is a historically minded group, we must acknowledge that it was during the 18th and early 19th centuries that the many issues that Indigenous peoples face took root or were solidified. As we largely portray British colonists, we wish to acknowledge the impact that our historical counterparts had on the Indigenous peoples of the Americas, whether as enemies or as allies. The issues caused by a loss of traditional territory are not distant concepts confined to history books. They're pervasive modern issues that must be recognized. Just a little quick introduction on James. So James, who lives in the Seattle area and has worked in traditionally rigged sailing vessels since 2018, with his most recent work being with Brig Lady Washington as the mate for her winter maintenance period. James is also a historical fencing instructor, primarily dealing with saber and what we know about hand-to-hand combat aboard early 19th century sailing vessels. And he's also a warranted gunner with the Naval Establishment. Aside from being the unit head of His Majesty's Bomb Ship Terror on the West Coast, he acts as a consultant and collaborator with the Naval Establishment to offer input on event planning, standards of seamanship, and to keep the Naval Establishment in the loop with what's going on in the American tall ship fleet as best as he can. So just for a third time reminder, we'd like everyone to stay muted during the presentation. There will be time for questions later on. And if you have any pressing questions or you're worried you might forget them, feel free to throw them in the chat and I'll be taking a log of them and I'll bring them up during the question period. Also, if anyone on here is watching from the Facebook Live event, I'll do my best to monitor that one as well. But at the end of the presentation, James will give us his email. So if you have any questions after the fact or we didn't get to your question, feel free to send him an email. And with that, I will hand it over to James. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rory. Hello, everyone. I'm James Hsu. Thanks, Rory, for the introduction and land acknowledgement, all important things. So tonight, we're going to go over hacking, wearing ship, as well as some basic sail theory. So how we believe sails to work and how we do that modernly, how we did that historically. And part of this will be kind of highlighting how the advent of new technologies has made this easier for us at times, but it's also important to couple new technologies with old, because that's how we get the full picture. So I'm going to share my screen. 1 second. Sorry, I got my tabs all mixed up. Okay. Yep. So tagging and wearing ship. There's my contact info, gunnershoot@gmail.com. I'll be sure to give that out more, probably several times throughout the presentation, so that nobody loses it. When we're talking about tacking and wearing a vessel, one of the most basic things, aside from rig type, what your vessel's capable of, what you as a crew person or potentially the commander of a vessel are capable of, it's going to be knowing what your points of sail are. The points of sail, I took this image from safeskipper.com because it's probably one of the better ones that I found. But the points of sail are divided into essentially close hauled, beam reach, and running, or close hauled, beam reach, broad reach, running, and then the no sail zone. So if we imagine our vessel is here in the center, just use your imagination. We have the no sail zone, which is directly in front of her. The no sail zone for most vessels is going to be usually at a minimum 45-degree angle out from the bow. For some vessels, it's more. It also depends on your rig. If you're a square rigger, you're going to have a larger no sail zone. If you're a fore and aft rig, you're going to have a smaller no sail zone. But the no sail zone essentially means that you are in irons. If you want to go directly into the wind, which good luck since they didn't have engines, you're not going to be going anywhere. At best, you're staying in one place. At worst, you're actually being propelled backwards. As we move to the we move to this side. Wow, I'm totally blanking. Port and starboard side. Port side. God, jeez. Wow, look at me, joking already. So we have tacks and a tack in general. If we're on a port tack, we'd be taking wind over the port side of the vessel. If we're on the starboard tack, we would be taking wind over the starboard side of the vessel. And that's just good terminology to know. We have all these points of sail that basically dictate how our rig would be oriented. We have close hauled, close reached, beam reach, broad reach, training run, run, and then back up into the no sail zone. Just a little piece of kind of trivia. Close hauled and close reach for a square rigger are pretty much going to be the same thing. If you're fore and aft rigged, the angle of that you're taking wind at can actually really make a big difference on how you orient your rig. So if you are ever on a square rigger while it's under sail and you ask someone about point of sail, generally it's going to go close hauled, beam reach, broad reach, and then running. If you ask someone on a schooner or fore and aft rig, you're going to get kind of all the different spots in between because that's really important. Common types of traditionally rigged vessels are barks, barkentines, brigs, brigantines, topsail schooners, fore and aft schooners, cutters, and ketches. All of these would have been present in North America and parts of Europe during the Napoleonic era. I can get into the specifics of each one, but there's certain rigs. So square rigs will have a combination of square rigs and fore and aft rig sails. The predominant kind of sail that you'll find, or rather the sails that are providing the most drive forward, are going to be square rigged. And square rigged is perpendicular to the keel. And I'll kind of demonstrate that when I get back to using my own video. Fore and aft rigged vessels, their primary means of drive is going to be fore and aft rig sails. It does not necessarily mean they don't have anything that's square rigged on the vessel. It just means that a majority of their drive is coming from fore and aft rig sails. And this, on the right-hand side of the screen, is our typical fully rigged ship. While the connotations of a fully rigged ship have changed drastically since the age of sail to now, a lot of people say that you can fit a boat into a ship, but you can't fit a ship into a boat. It has to do with an actual rigging type. And the actual rig type varied greatly throughout time because earlier square rigged ships would definitely not have had this many sails on it. But by the time we get to the 19th century, they're basically putting everything they can on. Common sails on square rig vessels are going to be course and forecourse, topsails on the main, fore, and mizzen, topgallants or top gallant sails, royals, spritsails, staysails, jibs, studding sails. There's even more you could put on there that I won't go into. And then fore and aft rigs mostly are going to have a mainsail, which is stay or gaff rigged, foresail, which is stay or gaff rigged, staysails, jib topsails, gaff topsails, and square topsails. While I would love to go into what the differences are between each one of these kinds of sails, I think that's slightly outside of the connotations of this presentation, but always feel free to shoot me an email. I love talking about this. General info, there's two myths that I want to dispel right off the get-go so that everyone's on an even playing field. Square rig vessels can tack. There's some folks who believe that square rig vessels cannot tack. That's flat out wrong. The two square rig vessels that I worked on, Hawaiian Chieftain and Lady Washington, they can tack well. Well, Chieftain when she was able to operate, and they can also wear just fine. I think this is a myth stemming from the fact that when you get to a certain size of vessel, it's more advisable to wear than it is to tack. But square rig vessels have always been able to tack, and anyone who says otherwise is not as informed as they think they are. Fore and aft rig vessels are superior rigs. I hear this one a lot too, and that really comes down to what you're doing. Fore and aft rigs are great for transiting along a coastline or in between islands, but they're not as efficient as square riggers when it comes to transoceanic voyages. And I guess a general rule of thumb is fore and aft rig is more maneuverable, but you have less drive pushing you forward. Square riggers are not quite as maneuverable, but you have a lot more drive, so you can take advantage of prevailing winds a little bit better. And a few good rules of thumb. Fore and aft rig vessels generally are more easily tacked than square rig vessels. On the other hand, jibing or wearing can be extremely dangerous for them. Square rig vessels can tack, but depending on the size of the vessel, weather conditions, available sea room, and where you plan on going, it's sometimes more advisable to wear. Cool. So yeah, that's the context that we're working in. There's a lot that I could go into in general that, again, we'd be here, I think, for probably most of the evening. And I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we got this little whiteboard that I need to turn off my background for. I have this little whiteboard that I'll be using to draw some things on. This one I drew points of sail, as they are generally considered to be on a square rigger. But yeah, I'll be erasing this and putting things more onto it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define what tacking and wearing is. For those of you who are maybe new to sailing or have been on sailing vessels but haven't maybe necessarily operated them, either as a passenger or maybe you're just doing something else on the vessel, we can define tacking and wearing as such. So tacking is moving your bow through the eye of the wind. Good luck reading that. I hope it's better than what I can see. Wearing or jibing, and we'll get to what the difference is, if any, in a second, is moving your stern through the eye of the wind. This is an important distinction because, well, especially for square riggers, because a lot of the reason behind tacking and wear, well, actually the primary reason behind tacking and wearing is so that you can maneuver to a more advantageous point of sail, or there's a specific place that you need to go, and it would be dumb to continue on your current tack because you either wouldn't get there or you'd run into something. There's no bones about that. If you have a little vessel, what do we want to name our little vessel? Whoever unmutes their self first and says something gets to name it. I'm waiting. Tom, do you want to name it? No? Come on, somebody name the vessel.
Rumbustion. Rumbustion.
Rumbustion. So we have little vessel Rumbustion. Rumbustion wants to go somewhere. Pretend that she's like the tiniest little brig with a mainmast and foremast and bowsprit, but really poorly. Wow, what's going on with that bowsprit? With the bowsprit. And we want to go someplace or another. Now we're going to ignore completely what our sail orientation is, just so we can kind of get the idea of things. But if the wind is coming over the, God, I've been on land too long. So the starboard side, and now we want Rumbustion to go this way. So we want Rumbustion to be going that way. We can do that one of two ways. We can take Rumbustion's bow and take it through the eye of the wind and set up on its new tack, wherever that is, going hopefully in that direction somewhere. And so that would be tacking. If we wanted Rumbustion to go that way, but we didn't want to take her bow through the wind, maybe because the crew's inexperienced, we don't have the manpower, or maybe it's just ill-advised because there's lots of things going on, we could wear. And in this case, I'd actually say it's probably a better idea to wear. And so we would take the stern through the eye of the wind, and this would be like a really big wear, probably not one that you'd actually do. And then out to the direction that you want to go. So that is tacking and wearing. Simple definition. The definition or the distinction between tacking and wearing, or not tacking, wearing and jibing, there isn't really a distinction. And the reason there isn't a distinction is because we just come down to time and terminology. Over time, with more fore and aft rig vessels, especially schooners being used, we start hearing the term jibe a lot more. Whereas with square riggers, you traditionally say the word wear. They mean the same thing. Anyone who says otherwise should maybe talk to me. I'm always here. I'm lonely. I'm a lonely sailor out here on land. So now I'm going to share my screen again, and you're all going to get to witness this really cool program that Bill Wand showed me. Thanks, Bill. That is about, I think, the best tacking and wearing simulator I've ever seen. And I will warn you in advance, you should turn down your volume a little bit because there's these loud bings that go on, and I don't know how loud they're going to be for you. And I value your eardrums, because that means if you have eardrums, I can yell at you later. It's my job. Great. Share the screen. Okay. So here we have, as much as I'd love to keep calling it the Rambunction, here we have the Surprise. This is I'm assuming this is put out by someone at San Diego Maritime because they operate a vessel named Surprise. And yep, and there's the loud bing. But here we have a whole bunch of rotational thrust numbers that don't mean anything to me, so you can ignore those. But here we have a track. So this is tracking where we're going, where we're making headway to. This is our sail plan. Right now we are a fully rigged ship. We currently only have our mizzen royal set, but that will change here in a second. And then this is kind of our compass. And our compass is nice because it tells us where the wind is coming from. It tells us our heading. It also tells us the orientation of all of our spars. So this little white one out back is the rudder. This is our spanker boom. This is our mizzen stack. So all of these guys. This central one is the main stack on the mainmast. So all of these guys. And the foremost one is, oh, you're all muted. It's the foremast. Hey, This is the foremast, and that is our forestack. And then ostensibly there's our jib out here somewhere, but it's kind of hard to note that in this program from above. So what we're going to do is hopefully not run into one of these two islands. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to wear ship. So just to orient everyone, our stern is going to go through the eye of the wind, which is over here, and set up on a new course. Keep going away. So warn you, there's going to be lots of loud bings. Try and ignore them. I'll be talking. It might be chaos. We'll see how it goes. Bing. Cool. So we're setting up. Yeah, set all the royals. I want, let God take it all down. So I'm going to give a command to my helmsman that I want him to steer, or they to steer, heading 3, 2, 1. I'm going to tell my sailors to man their braces. And to help them do this, I'm going to take in the spanker. The reason I'm taking in the spanker is because there's a whole bunch of wind pressure. I'll talk more about this later, but there's a whole bunch of wind pressure on the spanker that's keeping our stern from smacking through it, being spanked around, as it were, through the eye of the wind to set up onto our new tack. And there's normally a whole bunch of commands showing up in here, but because we're wearing, it's pretty boring. And I'll get into what the commands are later. There's a lot less yelling than I would like, honestly. But hopefully we avoid the island. I think we will. But right now, as you can see, our mizzen, main, and forestack are all tracking the wind. So tracking the direction of the wind. These little red crosshair, which is kind of tracking through the vessel, is our point of rotation. It's a theoretical point where our vessel is rotating around. And this is where my sailors normally look up at their stacks very bored, and I yell at them to go faster or slower depending on what they're doing. Waiting, pretty boring. Oh, cool, I missed the island, that's good. That would be bad, I'd probably lose my commission. Oh wait, I don't have a commission. Yeah. Cool, so now I've started to make my way through the tack. I'm now going to bring my spanker, which is controlled over here, to be on a starboard tack. And now I'm going to set my spanker again so that I can help the vessel get through its wear and onto its new tack. And the helmsman, being a good helmsman, will tell me when they're steering the course that I want them to. Cool, we made it. We made it through the wear. So very simple maneuver. And I'll bring out my whiteboard and show kind of what's going on here now that we've kind of seen it in as close to real time as we can. So we take our vessel here, the HMS Rambunctious, I think is what we're going with. She's 3-masted with a main, mizzen, and fore. She has at least one of her headsails set, and she's taking wind from a broad reach on a starboard tack. This is what this looks like for now. We have, oh God, there we go. We have rambunctious. We're taking wind on a broad reach over a starboard tack. The orientation of our sails is going to be thus. We're going to track all of this wind with our mizzen stack. This might also not be the best just due to my perspective. So, you know, mizzen stack, our main stack, and our fore stack. So, and then we also have our spanker boom, which is out here towards, it's set up on a starboard tack, taking wind. So what's going on basically in this tack or this wear is really, really simple. The command is pretty much going to be, give me notes, stand by to wear. And then all of your sailors groan because it's boring. That's a joke. They all groan because it's boring. And then they all go to their appropriate stations that are dictated through either their mast captains, or if you're on a much smaller crew, they just kind of should know where to go, especially on merchantmen. The next command is going to be take in the spanker. Spanker? I hardly know her. I would love to hear the groans, but I can't. It's a tank in the spanker. So we're removing the spanker period. The spanker, when it is set, it's a really cool sail. The spanker works in direct contrast with the headsails. So this is our headsail. We'll just call it a jib for now. So when we do have the spanker set, the spanker creates a lot of pressure on the stern, which offset or working in concert against each other with the headsails allows the vessel to keep steerway. Essentially, we're evening out the pressure on the bow and the stern by using the spanker and headsails, so that when we actually have the chance to use our means of steerage. If we took away the spanker, what will happen is the bow wants to fall off the wind, which turns it into a wear, which is advantageous for us. If we were to take off the headsails from up here, the spanker would then push the stern around and push our bow through the wind. Doing that unintentionally either way is not great because you've kind of screwed it all up, but that's the general theory behind what's going on. So if we want to wear, we want to take our stern through the eye of the wind onto whatever tack we want to do. So the first thing we do, going back to our evolution, is we take in the spanker. The next thing is going to be the either commander, the helmsman is going to say helms down. The command helms down basically means that so if you're steering by tiller, it's more obvious because your tiller is always in the direction that the rudder is facing. If you're steering by wheel, there's more things going on in that process. But helm down means that it's oriented in a way that's going to bring the stern through the eye of the wind. Even if it was on engine, helms down would be taking the stern through the eye of the wind. Now comes the really boring part, where all the people manning their braces track the wind. Something that's really important is to, especially on fully rigged ships, we want to try and keep the mizzen and the main. We want to keep those generally in the same, going at the same speed, the same way at the same spot. They are the ones that are providing the most forward drive for our vessel. So if we screw up tracking the wind, we'll lose a good point of sail, and we might just, worst case scenario, in an ideal situation, worst case scenario is we just blow it and we probably wear anyway, but it's not great and we might not be set up on the point of sail that we want to be. Worst case scenario is the wear goes a little bit out of control and we might hit a navigational hazard or another vessel. But anyway. So as we're doing this, the main and the mizzen are tracking the wind. Now let's say we're bed down or running. Orientation is going to be roughly here. And now as we keep moving, wind is now over here on a broad reach. Our spars will be oriented as such. This point of sail, this is probably the extreme of a broad reach, is not a great point of sail for us. The reason being, we're shadowing too much of the rig with itself. So the foremast is generally, the foremast up here is generally what gives square rig vessels our greatest amount of maneuverability. We have our drive coming from our mainmast or mizzen if we have it, but the foremast is what is making us maneuverable. And it will become a lot more important once we talk about tacking, but that's just generally how it goes. In this orientation, I could argue that maybe we're shadowing the foremast a little bit too much with the main and the mizzen. And so I would probably keep going until we're a little bit more akin to a little bit more of a beam reach. And keep going up there. We'd set the spanker now at this point because we'd be up on our new tack. We'd haul the spanker boom over, in this case to starboard side to take wind over the port side. We'd set it. And then our headsails would be passed. To set up for the new tack. The reason our headsails are the last in this maneuver is because one, they're generating they're helping push that stern around through the eye of the wind. And also they are less important to us than getting our drive back in the end of this evolution. Headsails generally are going to be kind of the last thing dealt with in most sail evolutions. Occasionally they're the first and the last thing dealt with, but that is more applicable to tacking. So there you go. Put down the whiteboard. I'll put the whiteboard down, and then we'll kind of show the tack on that same program. But before we do that, if there's any glaring questions about, without getting too much into the sail theory, which we'll touch on later, if there's any glaring questions about wearing on a square rig vessel, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Going once. Going twice. Oh, Rory?
I'm just wondering how I've always been told that the immense pressure that can be put on a ship, her masts, and her standing rigging from wearing is such that you don't want to do it. Is that something more typical with modern tall ships, or would that have been true historically, or is it just they just don't want you doing it?
There's some truth to that. It kind of depends on your rig and also your vessel specifically. So for example, Lady Washington, she's, I think 67 feet on deck, which is 112 overall, two-masted brig. She tacks and wears fine. I think the fastest tack I've ever done was under 2 minutes. The slowest tack I've ever done was 10. The fastest wear I've ever done was about 5 minutes. The slowest was about 10.
Okay.
When we start getting to a much larger vessel, so like Stad Amsterdam, which is a fully rigged ship, there's winches everywhere. She's steel hulled, and she's just enormous as far as traditionally rigged vessels go nowadays. She would rather wear than she would tack because it takes her a lot less room to do it. However, if you take a schooner like Adventurous, or even like a brigantine, like Fairgene, a lot of the ones in the Great Lakes, they're going to be a little bit more hard pressed to jibe because it can go wrong very, very quickly, and that's the big danger. So long story short, less of a thing with square rigged vessels, to my knowledge, much more of a good rule of thumb if you were fore and aft rig primarily.
Awesome, thanks.
Cool. So I'll go back to sharing my screen again. Cool. So we've gotten through, you're going to hear a loud bing probably. Oh, you going? Yes, okay, you're going. Thank you, there we go. Yeah, so Surprise has made it through our wear. Great, cool. We set up on our new TAC point of sale. We're going along. You can see if I zoom out, oh, maybe it might have reset. But if we were to go back a little bit further on the map, you'd see that we made a pretty big arc to wear, but we didn't really lose any ground. It just took us, a bit of seed room to do it. Now we're going to tack. Thank you, helmsman, for watching your helm. Now we're going to tack the vessel. So we're going to take our bow through. Thank you, helmsman. Through the eye of the wind to our new tack. So just to kind of stream of consciousness do this, I'm going to tell my helmsman that I now want to steer 119. I'm going to tell the yardsmen to man their braces, and now I'm going to haul the spanker to weather because the program wants to try and make this work. Come on, I believe in you, program. You did it so well earlier. Let's restart that. Let's try that again. Dang computer crew. Okay, so now we're going to try attack again, due to our computer crew's incompetence, or rather me not telling them that we were planning on attacking. So we're going to steer 162. Yes, I realize that might be too close to the wind, but because I just needed to work in the computer program. We tell the yardsmen to man their braces. And the program should start hauling the spanker to weather. The first thing that's generally going to happen is ease headsail sheets. We're going to depower our headsails because that is what's primarily opposing us from getting through the eye of the wind. Soon you'll probably see a command to ease down the helm. Another command that's common is helms a lee, meaning that we have now begun the maneuver to tack. Using headsail sheets, we've hauled our spanker to weather. So it's still set. We've hauled it all the way to the other side to put more pressure onto our stern to get us through the eye of the wind. Then now is kind of the moment of truth where we wait to see if our bow will actually make it not only into the eye of the wind, but get all the way through. These helm commands, by the way, are historical in the fleet nowadays. It's kind of wishy-washy on whether you give them or not. But helmsley is definitely one you give. So we just had mainsail haul. Mainsail haul, we have our main and mizzen stack be hauled all the way over to our new tack. This is normally sharp to sharp. I'll talk about what that is later. This is so we can prepare ourselves I'll try and do the screen thing in a second, but it prepares ourselves to set up on the new tack. You can see our point of rotation is still kind of hanging out. It went way up towards the bow and now it's going back down towards the stern. Haul headsails tight. Another command is back headsails. This is going to give us a little bit more push to get us through this tack. Oftentimes you can tack without it. Sometimes you need that little bit of extra oomph. And pretty soon we're going to see let go and haul. Let go and haul will be the force tack to give us the last bit of drive to make us all the way over there so we can set up for our new tack. We've had let go and haul. We have right the helm, which basically means steer what I told you to. And now I'm going to kind of come down a little bit more so that we can actually keep ourselves up on this this tack. Hey, kitty cat. There's a cat on my desk. And now we're set up on our new tack. Interestingly enough, if you guys were paying attention to what's going up here on the track, there is a point in time where a square rig vessel, while tacking, is actually sailing backwards. And so you can kind of see we turned up into the eye of the wind, and we were actually in irons for a time, waiting to see if our momentum will carry us through to get us through the eye of the wind. And once that became apparent, we completed the tack and now have set up on our new point of sail. I think it's a really cool thing with square riggers. We sail backwards and we do it on purpose. Cool. Get my whiteboard back out. Cool. So we've got our vessel here, and we want to tack. We're again having kind of a broad reach off of a port tack. Sails are going to be roughly oriented this way. Cool. So the first command that's going to happen, just so that everyone's prepped, is normally going to be ready about. Another common one is standby to tack, or ready to come about, or come about. So now everyone has gone to their appropriate stations, and we're going to kind of move into the next thing. The next command will be, or the next thing shouted out is going to be helms a lee. This one is less of a command, more because the helmsman is normally right there with the officer in charge of the maneuver, and they will, that's something that they call out to let the crew up forward know that we're about to really get into the tack. These will kind of happen simultaneously, so just so you know, but we're going to haul the spanker to weather. And at the same time, we're pretty much going to ease headsail sheets. Sometimes it's just ease headsails. Sometimes it's let fly headsails. Sometimes it's rag headsails. You know, you have some artistic license with that. So the spanker's hauled over to weather. The headsails are kind of, they're not doing anything at this point, because if they were doing something, they'd be opposing our rotation into the eye of the wind. So now, for a chance, let's say that we're about here. We're really starting to get up into the eye of the tack. Really should have drawn the vessel lower. A little lopsided, that's okay. So we've got our spankers still to weather. Our head sails aren't doing anything. Now the mate or whoever is helping the captain through the sail maneuver on the quarterdeck is basically going to be looking up. And for a moment, the sails are going to be not aback, but they're not going to be drawing anything. And you're kind of, I struggle to describe it because a lot of it's visual, but there's a point where you start seeing the main and mizzen stack kind of luff a little bit. You start seeing them they're starting to try and catch wind. So now, let's say we're pretty much dead into the wind. If we were not able to make the stack, if something was going wrong, we would then back our head sails. There's that little nub out there to help push the bow around. As we keep going through the tack, we're now going to get somewhere when the wind is over here, we're going to get mainsail haul. On a brig like Lady Washington, that means that we're just bringing the main stack around. On anything with 3 masts, square rigged, we're going to be bringing around the mizzen as well. And we're going to bring it around as sharp as we can in preparation for getting on to the new point of sail. The head sails are doing whatever. At this point, now we're pretty much there. Like we're just about there. Now we're going to call for let go and haul, which is when we bring the 4 stack around. Onto the same tack. And then once we finally made it through our tack, the last command is going to be pass head sails. So that is tacking on a square rig vessel. You can see it's a lot more involved. It's way more involved. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more that has to be just right to make it work, or else things can go potentially very wrong. As I was saying to Rory earlier, if you're on a really, really large vessel and you blow a tack, you could potentially break the rig, which is not good for anyone, especially in that moment where you're in irons waiting to see if you get through the tack. If you really blow it there, square rig vessels, they don't take wind that way. There's no way they can do that. And so you could potentially send things down from aloft in a very expeditious way, much to the chagrin of your crew. This takes, I wouldn't say more training, it just takes a lot more attention. The crew should always, the crew and officers are always very intentional and always should be aware of what's going on in the rig. This one, you can't really afford to have anyone lollygagging around. This is when it becomes really, really dangerous for anybody to just be idling about and not doing their job. Cool. So that's tacking and wearing, like real blunt, there you go. Before I get into how to do this on fore and aft rig vessels, which unfortunately I don't have a cool program to do that on, so it'll just be me and my whiteboard. Do I have any questions specifically about tacking square rig vessels? Unmute yourself or forever hold your silence until the end of the Zoom presentation.
Hey, James.
Yes.
Carl here. I was wondering, that simulator that you had, is that public domain? Are you able to share that URL?
Yes, I will actually, I will post that to Psyche Terrors page, which is, I don't think a lot of people are on yet, and then the Naval Establishment page, so that everyone can find that. And again, thank you to Bill Wand for bringing that to my attention and made my job quite a bit easier, because otherwise it would have just been me and the whiteboard the entire time. And my mug is only so good to look at for so long. Yeah, cool. So when we get to fore and aft rig vessels, things become a lot simpler, so much simpler. So if we have a fore and aft rig vessel, let's just say that this is, oh wow, that's really bad. Jeez, James, what are you doing? So since this is a fore and aft rig vessel, the first person to unmute themselves and name it, that's its name.
Jean Lafitte.
Okay, Jean Lafitte. This is probably not how you spell Lafitte. So I think that's Lafayette, but whatever, it works. So we're going to be dealing with, in this era, we're primarily, with fore and aft rig vessels, we're primarily dealing with things that are two-masted. We've got mainmast and the foremast. The sail plan of these vessels is incredibly simplified compared to square rig vessels. And I will say that if you have any square rigged sails on the main and foremast, they basically go at the same time as everything else would through the general sail evolution. So on the main, we have the mainsail, and then on the fore, we have the, you're muted, foresail. And then we have, for I guess, you know, the sake of four things, we have the jib and the staysail. The full suit of sail on a schooner could be the mainsail, the foresail, gaff topsails, the foretopmast staysail, the jib topsail, the flying jib, the fisherman's like so many things, but it's a little bit simpler. Cool. So we have Jean Lafayette, and we want to take Jean Lafayette, and we want to jibe. We want to jibe with Jean Lafayette. The wind again is coming on a starboard tack. Everything's oriented to the port side to take advantage of that. This is what we would call a broad reach. For me, it's just the simplest thing to show when teaching things, and also it's a generally good point of sail. The sails are probably a little bit more like this. So we want to jibe Jean Lafayette. And if everyone remembers, jibing and wearing are the same thing. So we're going to take our stern and we're going to take it through the eye of the wind and set up onto our new tack, whatever that is. Before I get into what the process is, I just want to touch on jibing in a fore and aft rig vessel is something you can do. It's something you can do safely as long as you've planned for it. With a square rigger, you can wear, and you can wear somewhat unintentionally and you'll be fine. And wearing is not quite as dangerous on a square rigger, provided, you know, it's normal quote unquote conditions. Jibing on a fore and aft rig vessel is a great way to dismast yourself and then maybe accidentally kill everyone on board. This is, you know, we have the joke on small boats, fore and aft rig small boats, that if you jibe unintentionally, you just kind of, oh, well, that was terrifying, and then you set up on your new tack. That's the benefit of lots of synthetic materials, steel masts, all that. Sometimes you're sometimes you'll just get a bang in the head and be like, oh, well, that wasn't fun. But yeah, you can potentially destroy your vessel doing this, especially if you're not super aware of what's going on around you. But the first thing that's going to happen, these are the fun commands. I love these commands. It's going to be stand by to jibe or prepare to jibe. So the entire crew has now been alerted to the fact that we are about to jibe. The helm will call out helms down. Spell helm. Helms down. So we're now oriented, with the rudder's now oriented, so that we want to start bringing the stern of the vessel through the eye of the wind. At this point, we're now more or less running, which I'll get to how that is both good and bad for fore and aft rig vessels. But now we've hauled everything in basically to a close haul. So it's as close onto the wind, it's hauled in as much as things can be without necessarily being center lined, which means that we would start having a different phenomenon going on. At this point, so there's a whole bunch of people, I call them the bobsled team. There's a whole bunch of people who have to stack up on the main sheet for the mainsail to get the boom around to make it close hauled, especially if you were on any sort of broad tack, like a broad reach. You have a lot of hauling to do. So you have a little bit of time for preparation. The next thing that's going to happen, and this happens extremely quickly, so you have to be on top of it. I've done this before, you have one person at this point now who is tending the main sheet. Everyone else has gone off to do their own thing. They've normally gone forward to tend the headsails, help the foresail if they need to. There is at this point one person from a cleat tending the entire main boom over onto its new tack, which is something you can totally do as long as you are aware of what's going on and you feed enough slack before the jibe happens into the main sheet. If you don't feed enough slack into the main sheet, you can get your hands run through a cleat, which I like your hands. Please keep your hands. And if that happens, the main boom is probably swinging around, and then we all have a bad time, and the Coast Guard comes and asks us what happened, and we ashamedly admit that we were bad sailors and made a bad decision. But as we're moving through the eye of the wind with our stern, this is my favorite command. You're going to hear the captain enthusiastically say, potentially with fear and stress, jibe ho. This is the cue for especially the person tending the main sheet to be really aware of what's going on. So as we jibe ho, we make it through the eye of the wind, and we're now setting up on our new tack. And this is something that generally you're going to ease all the way out to your new tack directly after the jibe. So it's just one person easing the main out. So if this is going to be our new tack, so broad reach on a port tack, the person tending the main sheet lets this out expeditiously, but with care, to our new tack, and then the headsails get fast. You're up on your new tack. Way simpler, right? Way simpler, just a lot more on the line. Fewer working parts, more stress, more potential for things to go wrong on those individual parts, less redundancy. The headsails, what's going on with the headsails is to get through, you'll often depower them at the beginning, which is something I didn't say. You'll depower the headsails, so you'll say like rag the jib or something, so that the bow or the stern can move, and then you'll set up on your new tack. Cool. Any questions about jibing fore and aft rigged two-masted vessel?
Hey, James, quick question.
Yes.
For some perspective, I mean, my background is in like sailing dinghies and things. How long does it take in a ship of that sort of size to do one of these maneuvers?
Yeah, so for wearing, especially on like a schooner, you can jibe in like the actual act of jibing might only last a minute, if that. It's all of the preparation that goes into it, and letting out the sheet onto your new tack. It's lightning fast, and that's what makes it so dangerous, especially if it's done unintentionally. Is there's nothing you can do to stop it if it happens unintentionally. You just kind of hope and pray that you all survive.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Going
I have
once?
one.
Oh, yes, Nick.
Hey, so if you have to say if by some circumstance you're in a firefight with an enemy ship and you have to pull out this maneuver, how many moving pieces would that work, and how feasible is that? Would you have to stop cannon fire to move the boat, or I mean,
It depends on the size of the crew. Fore and aft rig vessels in general need less crew. But on a military vessel where a lot of that crew is also actively engaged in other things, my gut instinct would be that jibing would be a really bad idea. because of the inherent risk of the maneuver, and also because you need a pretty high level of skill on the crew to make it happen. And yeah, if things go wrong, you've also put yourself out of the entire engagement in a really spectacularly terrible way.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Ranger on?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nick.
Yes, kind of off subject a little bit, but with these different commands, right now I'm very interested in the sea shanties, and with listening to you, it sounds like different. Is there time for a shanty, or is it just a matter of that each sailor knows what to do and just does that job, or is everything done with shanty for manpower?
Yeah, so just a really quick tangent on that. Shanties were more common in the merchant marine, and they were very common for either leisure activities or to coordinate sail set and then getting underway from anchor. Shanties would really not have served a useful purpose in maneuvers, and it wasn't all that uncommon for, the deck should be a relatively quiet place. It's a work environment. People need to know what's going on. During a sail maneuver like this, the only things being said should be callbacks or commands that are coming from the quarterdeck to the mast captains.
Right. You
Yeah.
need command and control.
Yeah, it's clear, explicit communication, which shanties have that built in for very specific things, but definitely not for sail maneuvers. But that's a very good question. Thank you.
Okay.
Cool. Going once, going twice. Sold until the end of the Zoom session. So the next command that we're going to go over is tacking. Tacking is so incredibly easy on fore and aft rig vessels. It's almost not even funny. I mean, I did have a laugh about it when I worked on my first schooner, and it was like, really? That's all? God, I've been working on the wrong boats, guys. But yeah, it's really incredibly simple.
Sorry, James,
Yes.
just while you're setting that up, would you mind just hitting speaker view on your computer? Just because on the Facebook recording, it's just showing up as a grid and it's harder to see the whiteboard.
Oh, okay. Did that help anything?
There's a delay, but I'm sure it did.
Okay, because the speaker view
Thanks.
the speaker view that I'm getting is you.
That's fair. Once you start speaking, it'll be fine.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Thank you. Cool. Hopefully that worked. Sorry about that. I totally forgot. Whoever said that on Facebook, I apologize. Cool. So we're going to tack. So again, coming from starboard tack, taking wind over the starboard side, we now want to bring our bow through the eye of the wind. Let me come over here. This is fun. So the commands that are generally going to happen, it's ready about. Doing whiteboard contortion. This is my exercise for the day. Ready about. The next command is normally going to be a call for hands to the main sheet. And then people will kind of fill in wherever else they need to be. But the biggest thing about getting hands to the main sheet is that, not unlike the spanker, all of our drive and also all of our steerway, so counteracting the head soles, is going to be our mainsail. And so we want to haul that in close to what is essentially a close reach, not quite center line, but a close reach in order to prepare it to set up on the next tack. The 4 is kind of going to do the same thing. Generally takes less people. On adventurous, it can take, oh god, 8 people to haul in the main sheet, whereas it can take like 2 to haul in the 4 sheet. And then the other thing that will probably get called is rag headsels, ease headsel sheets, whatever you want to say. We want to make these no longer a thing that we have to deal with until we get through the eye of the tack. Cool. So now we're putting a lot of pressure on the stern. The stern wants to kick out this way. And so we're basically bringing ourselves closer and closer. Let's say the wind is up here to our tack. This can also happen stupidly fast, especially if you're going from close hauled to close hauled, which is basically really close in on a port tack or really close in on a starboard tack. And so once we eventually make it through the eye of the wind, now the wind is, say, over here, where we're getting there. All of the people who are on the main sheet, except for 1, are now going to lay off the main sheet, and the main sheet will be eased out onto our new tack, as will the 4, and then our headsels will be reset so that they can offset all of that power out there on the stern. Really, really simple. Really, really awesome. You can do this with an astoundingly small crew, and you can do it extremely quickly. Yeah. Any questions on tacking a fore and after vessel? Going once. Going twice. Sold. Yeah, it's really simple, guys. It's great. Cool. So that is tacking and wearing. Before we move on to the next little section, which is going to be sail theory, which will help us further cement our understanding of tacking and wearing, as well as what tacks are. I'm going to open it up to general questions about sail maneuvers, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Oop, nobody has any questions. I'll just move right on. Going once, going twice. So, oh, Ranger Ron, you have a question? You raised your hand. You are, there you go.
Yes, I have a question. I have to find buttons and unmuting and whatnot.
Mhm.
At my shanty sings, there's a song, Scottish tune, Mingulay.
Mhm.
And in the tune, the caller is singing out, turn their head into the wind. That, to me, that sounds like you're turning the vessel around into, not directly into the wind, but that's what the command sounds like.
Yeah,
what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I would say that they're probably colloquially they're probably talking about tacking. Yeah, it's pretty spot on interpretation there.
Yeah, because that's a part of the chorus in the
Mhm.
in the tune.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen one last time because I think this might be done better digitally. We'll see. We're going to talk about some sail theory and how sails work. All right, welcome to the blank PowerPoint presentation. So we're going to talk about how square rigged sails work. So a square rigged sail, which I will do my best to draw. Come on. You do it. No. Oh no. Oh no. Well, okay, it was worth a shot. We'll go back to the whiteboard. Scores. So square rigged sail. The reason we call it a square rigged sail is because it is square, or it is square to the keel of the vessel. So as I draw this sail from what's roughly the top-down view. So this is the sail from a top-down view. The poopy end, the big belly end is the front end, the forward end, and the big black kind of squiggly line is the yard that it's attached to. So the bow or the keel would be running this way or this way. Square. Kind of looks like an umbrella, I guess, now that I see it. But the way that we believe sails to work is not unlike airplane wings. Just kind of weird airplane wings, if you catch my drift. So as we get air coming, wind coming up to the sail, we have an air pocket phenomenon basically happening where we have a whole bunch of air that's getting trapped kind of in the belly of this sail. And this is really cool because if you're on a traditionally rigged vessel that has nettles, reefing nettles, you can actually look on the back of the sail and you can see that the reefing nettles aren't moving at all. And that's because there's a whole bunch of air that's trapped right in here. As that air builds up and it's trapped, it can't move anywhere, the rest of the wind is going to come around the sail and kind of keep trying to move forward because it's wind. That's what it does. It wants to blow in a certain direction. What's happening up here is we're actually getting suction. So we're kind of sucking, like we're literally almost kind of sucking ships through the water with the air. It's pretty cool. And so people colloquially use the term, you got to catch the wind with your sail. You're half right. And so, yeah, so this is pretty much the way that it works. Kind of works the same as an airplane wing, or if you have the airplane wing, you get a whole bunch of rough air up here because there's normally an angle to it, and all of the air down here goes really fast, and so you get lift. So instead of lift this way, it's lift this way or this way. Oh, cool. When we start using multiple square sails in conjunction with each other, especially between two or more masts, we start having to get it's a little bit more creative, but it creates some really cool things. So again, if we're taking wind, oops, it's not anything. We're taking wind from, I don't know, the starboard side. We have our main stack. So our main stack, these are all the square sails on the main, and our fore stack. Which are all the vessels on the fore, or all the sails on the fore. We now start getting these two big pockets of rough air that don't want to go anywhere. We also get these two big pockets of rough air, or we get this pocket of rough air kind of in here as well. And so we start having the air wanting to kind of go, nope, I don't want to go in there. There's too much. You kind of keep going around. This gets caught by the spanker, which that's a really bad drawing, but that's why the spanker works, because this big old black line is the spanker. Some of the air gets caught here in the spanker, creates rough air. And it wants to keep kind of going this way or this way, which puts all of that pressure on the bow or the stern to keep that going where we want it to. We create all this rough air in here. that wants to keep pulling us forward. And then we have head sails out here. Sorry, this is a really rough drawing. We have head sails out here, which catch some of that. And again, using that same concept of rough air, air pockets, that's where we get the force that offsets the spanker. I also plan on later, after this presentation, dropping some better drawings onto the Naval Establishment Facebook page as well as other places, so that it's not just my crazy whiteboard drawings that everyone's having to see. The fore and aft rig sails work very much the same way. So if we have our main stack, our fore stack, and again, this is, you know, you'll see vessels that are fore and aft rig that have square topsails. They use them basically the same way. One stack goes around, the other stack goes around all at once. And we have our head sails out here. Again, if we're taking wind from the starboard side, we get these rough air patches. It doesn't want to move. This doesn't want to move. This doesn't want to move. This doesn't want to move. And so we start having all this rough air. This air wants to go, some of it wants to go this way. Some of it wants to go off this way. It sees that and goes, nope, I don't want to go there either. All up there. You get some air that will kind of inevitably do this. Some air that will kind of inevitably do this. I don't think this is as much of a thing up here with the head sails, but it's still potentially happening because all we really have are like dye models used in water, which is our best. The only real reason we can kind of have a really good idea about what's going on up here. But now we have something that's a little bit more akin to the airplane wing model. We have air moving over a rough area or bypassing rough area, going the path of least resistance, sucking us forward or lifting us forward, however you want to. And that, in general, is just about how every sail that I'm familiar with works. Of course, there's some of the indigenous peoples in Africa and around Australia have used crab claw sails, as well as in the Pacific Islands, which we can be buggered to understand how they work. We just know that they do. Yeah. So, any questions about real, you know, without getting too nitty gritty about sail theory? It's deceptively simple. Going once, going twice, 3 times. So cool. So that is the long of the short of it, or the short of the long of it, however you choose to think about it. Think about it your own way. Yeah, so that is basics, basic understanding of how vessels tack and wear, both for fore and aft rig vessels as well as square rig vessels. I want to be very, very clear that I work from my wealth of knowledge and the wealth of knowledge that people have had before me. And so because I am a finite person, the human mind is generally a finite thing, whereas the knowledge about these things is not. We have unlimited amounts of knowledge out there about how these things work. And I will do my best that when we get new information, either through experimentation or just through practical experience, to keep everyone updated about those things. Because as everyone knows, knowledge is not a fixed thing. Not in the least. It's at best extremely well informed and nigh, you know, you can barely refute it, but that's how knowledge works. Thank you all for coming. I'll get to you in a second, Bill. I'm now going to open up the floor. I realize this is 6:25 Pacific time, so if people want to dip out, that's totally fine by me. Again, my email is gunnershu, GUNNERHSU @gmail.com. I'll put that up in the chat. If you are ever in doubt about that, you can ask Bill, Tom, Rory, Patrick how to get a hold of me, and you'll get a hold of me. But I'm now going to open it up to general questions, not just about sailing, but about what I do in general. Bill, shoot away, fire away. Oh, Bill, there's something going on with your microphone. No. Well, I can hear you, but it's like a chipmunk. No, I would recommend. Yeah. I'd recommend putting your question in the chat. Unfortunately, I can't discern anything you're saying. Questions? I'll take all comers. Potentially, I reserve the right. Carl.
Hey, James. Hey, I got a question for you. Earlier on, you were talking about minimizing shadowing for your stacks, like on a fully rigged ship. Is there a tack that is more efficient, minimizing shadowing and maximizing the low pressure area on the forward edge of the sail?
Yeah, let me go
I mean,
back.
do those correspond or coincide? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I think I understand. Let me share my screen real quick again to show the points of sale. Cool. So this. So for most vessels, their best points of sale are going to be from close hauled to a broad reach or a training run. The reason for that is if you're going directly downwind, which you can see fore and aft rig vessels, especially schooners, can kind of get away with it more than square riggers because they can actually take their foresail and run it out a completely different direction, which is pretty cool. It's called wing on wing. Yes, so for square rig vessels, especially running, even a training run is kind of a bad point of sale. Not always, but if you're trying to get the most out of your stacks, especially if you have a lot set, this is kind of a bad zone to be in. You can start overshadowing yourself and your rig can start doing not weird things, but less ideal things that there's only so much you can do to compensate for. Likewise, close hauled is kind of a bad area for square riggers to be in. You're kind of at the maximum that you can orient your yards over to take advantage of that point of sale. And so that's where I said kind of more or less we have the snow sail zone. For square riggers, it's going to be a little bit more this quadrant that is not super tenable. And yeah, just because we only have so much purchase and ability to actually bring things around. Does that answer your question?
It does. So I guess it's just a compromise between where you want to go and what winds you have.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what you end up doing, what point you sail.
Yeah, and there's, we have cutters who historically they put out all the sails that they could to go wherever they needed to. Most people would say, and I would tend to agree, that if you're running, especially with all of your stuff set, you're just kind of at that point you're no longer in control of the vessel. You might be sailing, but you don't actually have control over your vessel. You're just kind of riding that, hoping you don't hit anything. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So Bill has popped out, but the question he had was if you ever spiral a stack of sails.
Yes, but we don't call it spiraling. We call it feathering. This is definitely much more of a thing on square riggers. The idea being that you can feather your stack. So generally, if I remember correctly, you want to feather from the bottom up. So you want the bottom, so the course to be kind of the loosest on the wind. Loosest is a relative term, obviously. And then as you go up, things will be a little bit closer onto the wind. You can almost think about like you have fingers. You want to feather your fingers a little bit, so you can take advantage of that point of sale. And that's something that I haven't done much, but I know that people who race, that's a very big thing. You need every little bit of drive you can. And before I answer another question, I forgot one command when it comes to tacking square riggers with course and 4 courses set. There's a command called rise tacks and sheets, because you have to bring those sails up in order to move the whole stack. And then you say tacks and let fall tacks and sheets, and they get set again. Otherwise, you have lots of problems. Cool. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Sorry for those of you on Facebook. I was a little late on getting that running up, so you kind of missed probably the very first inkling of the presentation. But thanks everyone for coming. I hope to do more of these, not just about sales specifically, but also kind of naval life in general, the time period. This has been recorded. It will go up on Harris YouTube. It'll probably go up on Naval Establishment YouTube. Also, if you email me and ask for it, I'll definitely give it to you, assuming that I can get a file that size to you. And again, my email is gunnershu, GUNNERHSU @gmail.com if you ever want to get a hold of me. Alternatively, you can find me on social media fairly easily. Patrick added a link to the lower deck manual in the chat. I'm not sure if that's something that I should have said, but there you go. If anyone wants to look at the lower deck manual, this video will probably be in it. Yeah, thanks so much. And I want to extend special thanks and gratitude towards Tom. If it wasn't for Tom, I don't think I would be in this hobby or this line of work, honestly. So thank you very much, Tom, and cheers, everyone.
I just want to say a huge thank you to James for putting this on, putting it together. He's a real tour de force of the naval establishment. So we're very lucky to have you, James.
One more whale, our captain cried. One more whale, then we'll beat the ice. But the winter star was in the sky. The seas were rough, the winds were high. And cold is the Arctic Sea. Far are your arms from me. Long will this winter be, frozen in Frobisher Bay, frozen in Frobisher Bay.